The Alchemist. Resolutely, Vikram went back to the tree, took down the corpse, threw it across his shoulder, and began to march towards the burial ground. O king, said the Bethal of corpse, what a pity that you should labor in the dead of the night. Let me divert you with a tale. He then narrated the following tale. At one time, King Suketu ruled over the Marala country. He was a man of great valor and little wealth. A terrible famine had ravaged the country for 12 years, and Marala became one of the poorest countries. The famine killed off a great part of population, and many people left the land in search of food. The country suffered in every way. To this land came a very aged alchemist, Vishwakarma by name. He saw the king and said, O king, I have devoted my entire life to alchemy. If you can support me for a year, I shall be able to make gold in any quantity. King Suketu thought that this was a great opportunity to make the kingdom rich. He had only to maintain the old man for a year, and there would be plenty of gold at his disposal. The country would prosper again. Agreed, said the king to Vishwakarma. You can remain in the palace for a year and carry on your experiments. I shall provide you with all the equipment you need. Then you make the gold, retain 1/6 of it for yourself, and give me the rest. Vishwakarma agreed to the terms. He was provided with a workshop which had a furnace, crucibles, acids, jars, and the like in it. He was also supplied with quantities of several base metals. The old man stayed in the workshop day in and day out, doing experiments to turn the baser metals into gold. Weeks and months passed. All the old man's wants were being amply satisfied. He was having a nice time. The year was soon gone. The king sent for the alchemist and asked him if he had succeeded in his experiments. O king, said the old man, I am still experimenting. In another 6 months, I shall be able to manufacture as much gold as you want. The king was sorely disappointed. You lied to me, he said, when you told me that you would be making gold in a year. But I shall pardon you this time. If you fail to make gold at the end of 6 months, your head shall be nailed to the fort wall. I hoped that you would provide me with gold enough to make the country rich. Then I thought I would collect a huge army and conquer the neighboring lands and become a great king. You have frustrated all my plans. Mind you, I am not going to pardon you a second time. Vishwakarma did not know what to do. He could not make even a particle of gold, though he had devoted all his life to acquire that art. In order to keep himself alive, he had to lie to various persons. Now he was very old. When he had asked for a year's time, he had hoped that he would be dead before the end of the year. But death had avoided him. He could not bring himself to commit suicide. He had obtained another 6 months of comfort, but he did not know what he was going to do after that. Vishwakarma contemplated flight, but the king was having him guarded well. The king's threat echoed constantly in his ears. He looked as though he was destined to die an unnatural death. The 6 months were over. The king sent for the old man and asked him, "Are you ready to make gold now?" "O king," the old man boldly replied, "I am not destined to make gold. Even if I were to live 1,000 years, I would not be able to make gold." "In that case," the king said, "you know what punishment awaits you." "There is no need to punish me," said the old man, "for as a result of my experiments, I have discovered something which will be of great value to you than all the gold in the world." "What have you discovered?" the king asked suspiciously. "Silver," the alchemist replied. "Silver purified with the help of several rare herbs." "Oh, what use is this silver to me?" asked the king. "Sir," said the old man, "I shall beat this silver into a thin sheet and cover the hilt of your sword with it. With that sword in your hand, you can conquer anyone. Let the sword obtain for you all the gold you want." "Are you going to cheat me again?" asked the king. "O king, how can I deceive you and get away with it?" the old man replied. "If the sword fails you, you can behead me then, is it not so?" The king thought that the old man spoke sensibly. He gave him his sword and got its hilt covered with the magic silver. The sword was publicly taken out in a procession and then sanctified. Vishwakarma obtained the gift of a small village from the king. News about the all conquering sword of King Suketu spread like wildfire. Some of the neighboring rulers were frightened, but others did not believe the rumors. They thought that Vishwakarma had played a hoax upon King Suketu. Soon, Suketu collected a handful of soldiers and marched upon a neighboring country. The ruler of the country sought the advice of his ministers. "Sir," said the ministers, "Suketu has got no army worth mentioning. He is marching upon us out of his blind faith in his sword. Let us fight with him," said one of the ministers. But others said, "Suketu is no fool. He is too good a warrior to attack us with such a small support unless there is something to that sword of his. They say that the sword is death to enemy. It is foolish to die out of bravado. Sir, let us sign a truce with him." The king was thoroughly frightened. He went with his advisers to see Suketu in his camp. Suketu was standing with his sword in his hand. The neighboring king saw death in that sword. He offered to accept defeat and become Suketu's vassal. From then on, Suketu never faced defeat. Even when some of the kings stood bravely against Suketu, their rank and file soldiers became panicky when they saw Suketu's sword and ran from the field, making it easy for Suketu to get at his enemy and put him to death with his sword. Soon Suketu found none to resist him. It was enough if he sent a messenger to the enemy camp. Immediately, his enemies signed any treaty which he cared to draw up. Suketu became a monarch in the course of time. Marala country was once again rich and prosperous. Vishwakarma's name and fame spread far and wide. Having finished the tale, Betal said, O king, tell me how Vishwakarma, who could not make a particle of gold in spite of years of efforts, managed to manufacture silver with such great powers only within the space of 6 months. And why had he to spend all his life maintaining himself with the help of lies? If you know the answer and still refuse to speak, your head shall split. The silver manufactured by Vishwakarma had no powers whatsoever, Vikram replied. Such powers lie in the minds of those who believe in them. Suketu was the first man to believe in the powers of that silver. So he started on a march of conquest with only a small army. His neighbor was the next man to believe in the powers and he accepted defeat without a fight. As the number of believers increased, so did the powers of the silver too. It is easier to create powers than to create materials. But Vishwakarma had to lie so long as he did not realize this truth. In the face of death, he realized this truth and prospered. As a matter of fact, this was the alchemy that he mastered in his old days. The king's silence thus broken, the Betal disappeared with the corpse and went back to the tree. Thank you for listening. Now, some word power. Alchemy. Alchemy means a type of chemistry, especially in Middle Ages, that dealt with trying to find a way to change ordinary metals into gold. Truce. Truce means an agreement between enemies to stop fighting. Vassal. VASAL. Vassal means a man who agrees to fight for a king or a king serving under an emperor. Thank you for listening.